Today is October 15th, 2020. My name is Ashley Sanchez, and I'm interviewing Carolina Velandia Hernandez for the Latino Oral History Project / Voces of a Pandemic project at the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois University. This project is a partnership with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin. Please know, Ms. Carolina, that this interview will be placed in the Northern Illinois libraries and shared with Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas, Austin. If there's anything you do not wish to answer or talk about, I will honor your wishes. Also, if there's something that you want to talk about, please bring it up and we'll talk about it. Because we're not conducting this interview in person, I need to record your consenting. So I'll ask you a series of 6 questions. Please say, yes, I agree, no, I do not agree, after each one. There are several questions we need to make sure you agree to before we go on. So the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies wishes to archive your interview along with any other photographs and any other documents at the Northern Illinois University libraries. Northern Illinois University libraries will retain copyright of the interview and any other materials you donate to the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies at Northern Illinois University. So for the first question, do you give the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to archive your interview and your materials at Northern Illinois University libraries?
Yes.
Do you grant Northern Illinois University libraries right, title, and interest in copyright over the interview and any materials you provide?
Over the interview, yes. The materials are some photos, and those photos have the faces of other people, so I really don't know how that works there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay, I will make sure to ask. I will ask about that.
yeah,
Okay, I will ask about that. Do you grant the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies consent to share your interview and your materials with the Voces Oral History Center at the University of Texas at Austin for inclusion in the Voces of a Pandemic Oral History mini project, which will include posing the interview on the internet?
yes. I am going to send you one photo of me so you can have like a serious photo.
Okay.
And I put just like the posters that I did and the photos of the people receiving the food, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so we don't have problems with other people later. I hope.
Okay. Yeah, okay. No problem. All right. So we have many questions in the pre-interview from that we have already filled out. We use that information for the pre-interview form to help in research. The entire form is kept in a secure Voces server at the University of Texas at Austin. So before Voces sends it to the Benson Library and the NIU libraries, we would have stripped out any contact information for yourself or family members so that will not be a part of your public file. Your public file will only be accessible at the Benson libraries and NIU libraries. Okay, so for question 5, do you wish for us to share the rest of your interview and your public file available to researchers at the Benson and NIU libraries?
Yes, sure.
On occasion, the Center for Latino and Latin American Studies and Voces receive requests from journalists who wish to contact our interview subjects. We only deal with legitimate news outlets. Do you give consent for us to share your phone numbers or your email with journalists?
Yes.
Okay, so that's it for the preamble. So let's jump right into the interview. Let me pull up the questions. So to start off, can you tell me a little bit about yourself, your name, how you identify, where you are from, any job overview, and what you were studying in school?
Well, my name is Carolina Velandia Hernandez. I'm a PhD student in political science. I am a Fulbright scholar. I came here because I won the Fulbright scholarship. I'm a former lawyer. I spent like 10 years of my life being a lawyer in oil and gas companies. I was working in hydrocarbons projects in contracts. I also was a teacher for almost 4 years in law school. in Colombia. And I was working mainly with contract law, commercial law, and private law.
Okay.
Um, I don't know about like more about myself. I just like dancing.
Hmm.
I danced more before I came here, before the PhD, because the PhD life is really hard.
What kind of,
And that's it.
yeah,
Is that okay?
yeah. What kind of dancing do you do?
I used to dance tango and salsa,
Mm.
and now I just practice more biking. It helps more for biking, and with the pandemic, like I cannot dance.
Hmm. Yeah, and so you mentioned that you were a lawyer and a professor and a faculty in the past in Colombia, and we mentioned this briefly in the pre-interview form, but what motivated you to pursue a PhD in political science?
The practice of oil law and all the environment of hydrocarbons lead me to write a book. I published a book in 2017, and I take 3 times 3 years to write that book. So I actually, my last job as a lawyer was until 2015. And I spent like 2 years writing that book and preparing myself to come to make my PhD.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make a shift that like include more the intersection of international relations and public policy, because law by itself doesn't resolve a lot of problems. Law is like a photography of a political moment,
Mm-hmm.
and politics and economics are the big forces that are behind the the law. So that's why I wanted to go for a PhD, especially in the transition to clean energy. I have been thinking about that. I have been thinking about how Latin American countries are going to deal with a technological change like that in energy.
Mm-hmm.
So I make a project to address that in Colombia, and I win the scholarship. And because I win the scholarship, is that I came here to US.
Mm-hmm. And when you said that you made that project in Colombia, are you talking about the book in general, or is there something else?
The book was one project, but the second project was like the proposal of your research. Like you have an idea, but actually when you came to the PhD, that idea transformed a little bit. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my personal project. Like now after the classes, what I'm trying to do is to put together a dissertation proposal that address that, no, that address transition to clean energy in Latin American countries.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. So to talk a little bit about COVID, how did you first learn about COVID-19?
Well, actually, I was in the last winter, was around December and January. I was seeing the news of China.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time that I saw something like seriously was in a U gym. I was biking in the machines of NIU, and it started to be like news that the virus were spreading around other countries, but no one wanted to talk about that the virus was coming to America continent, you know. So that
Mm-hmm.
was the first time. So the first thing that I read was about the control of China government, the whistleblower, and this doctor trying to say to the world that this is uncontainable, it's really important, it's really huge. No
Mm-hmm.
one knows what is happening. So, and I remember that I read that in January.
Mm-hmm.
In January, yeah.
Yeah. And at what point and how did you realize that it was serious?
Uh, for a spring break, we went with my boyfriend. He's an American student from history at NIU
Mm-hmm.
in the PhD of history. So we went to Louisiana for the spring break, like 5 days, and we went there. We have fun. We rest a little bit from the PhD, and when we came back that week, to DeKalb. DeKalb was like a futuristic dystopia. It was
Mhm.
other place. Like
Mhm.
there were no food in the supermarkets. There were no toilet paper. People was really nervous in the streets. People was wearing masks, and it was really shocking because we just landed from the airport at Chicago here, and we just came to DeKalb, and everything had changed.
Mhm.
And like a couple of weeks after that, the classes were canceled. We went to virtual, and the number of cases started to increase in Illinois and in US, and all the crisis in New York started to be really really heavy, and really like 2 or 3 weeks later in Colombia, in my country, I'm from Colombia, things started to be really serious. Like
Mhm.
the city started to collapse. The amount of they couldn't control the entrance from the airport. So I will say after spring break, like those 2 weeks after spring break, I realized like this was really really serious, and that my country will be severely affected.
Mhm. Yeah, and can you talk to me a little bit about the differences you saw in the development in the United States and Colombia?
Yeah. Uh, well, the differences are first, we are in the Midwest because it's a city that for me is really more like a town because the proportion that I have in my head is have been living in a city that has 12 million of people, like Bogota, a
Mhm.
massive transportation system, people walking every day, people is not addicted to cars as it's here. Um, so I was all the time seeing news of Colombia, seeing news from the United States, and to be living in another country that is not your country. Um, you have this sweet and bitterness of being far away.
Mhm.
So what I saw concretely was that the similarities were that both presidents denied how important they were the crisis. Both
Mhm.
presidents make people don't take it serious and don't use masks and don't use social distancing. And the local level officials, like the mayor of my city, of Bogota, the mayor of the town where my parents live, that is called Suacha, and the authorities here in Illinois, they did the same. They enforced the lockdown, they enforced the use of masks, they suggest the social distancing, and our university become virtual, and they try to help us with money, and they try to help with programs, and everything turns spiritual. In my country, the difference was a little bit more chaotic in terms of um, putting all the institutions to work. Um, and because my country has a strong problem of civil rights and a conflict. So at the time, I was seeing that the news were like people struggling to work, and the ones that didn't want to stop or go into a lockdown, then the authorities making everyone to be in a lockdown. And that went like for a couple of months until it happens the murder of Floyd here,
Mhm.
and in my country, a lawyer get murdered by police in
Mhm.
the streets.
Mhm.
So it was this mix between the pandemic and the police abuse. And in my country, it's more strong because it's still like it has been an ongoing process of violations of human rights after the Civil War conflict. We signed the peace agreement in 2016, and the people that signed the peace agreement has been systematically killed by the extreme right.
Mhm.
And there is former president, his name is Álvaro Uribe, that he's manipulating evidently the entire system. He last week he just get free from a condemn a huge manipulation of the courts in my country.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the difference between the crisis in the United States and Colombia in particular. Like the institutions more or less were here. People really still believe that the elections are going to make a difference. I have given up in the faith of my country, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like I just see that institution doesn't work, and I just see that there is a systematic abuse of human rights, and that my country is a dictatorship, is an authoritarian regime, even though they try to classify it as a old democracy. It is not. It's
Mm-hmm.
pretty evident. So I think the differences between United States and Colombia are in institutions, performance, in there is not this basic or systemic racism that is in here,
Mm-hmm.
uh, or at least it's a little bit less. But the Colombian context is more openly violent
Mm-hmm.
than in here.
Yeah.
It's more complex. No?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So talking now more about how COVID has impacted you, can you tell me some examples or ways in which COVID has impacted your daily life?
Yeah, well, the thing is that my family, my father in Colombia, lose his job completely.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad is a tailor. My mom used to have a beauty salon.
Mm-hmm.
So I am not part of the rich class of my country. I am a part of the middle class, poor class of my country. So all the education, all the work that I have done, it has been because of my effort, not because anyone gave it to me
Mm-hmm.
or because I have rich parents. No.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, if my dad loses his job, it means my brother and me, we have to help them. So we have been sending them money. So that's economically, that was really strong. Then emotionally, like to see people stressed, see everyone is scared, like to have this uncertainty of what is going on, the uncertainty of how NIU is going to deal with this crisis. So at the beginning, the first month, I think was the most heavy one
Mm-hmm.
because it was like to realize this is a really critical situation and not we don't know how to deal with it and there is not a clear information. So that was hard. That really affected me emotionally and psychologically, and I
Mm-hmm.
was really nervous. And at the same time, I had to work for my candidacy exam. And when you are a PhD student, you have to do three major things. The first is that you have to have classes. In my
Mm-hmm.
program, is 3 years of classes, and
Mm-hmm.
that implies statistics, methods, theory. Then you need to present two big exams that are written and oral. And when you pass those exams, you are able to present your own project. That is the project that I was talking to you about. That is
Mm-hmm.
the main reason why I came here.
Mm-hmm.
So I was preparing myself to present the second of these exams. I already had presented the first one before the pandemic. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was the time of making the exam preparation during the pandemic, dealing with the stress and the fact that friends were getting sick. I have a friend that gets sick here. I
Mm-hmm.
have a friend of a friend that died. I
Mm-hmm.
have members of a related family in Colombia that get sick. My
Mm-hmm.
parents get lost their jobs. Um, and my boyfriend and me, we were stressed because of the situation here in the cat, but then you start to feel pretty alone because you cannot
Mm-hmm.
see people, you cannot interact too much. Um, and when that friend gets sick, we were with her and we have to get tested. So we
Mm-hmm.
were really scared. His family was terribly scared. My family was really scared. So we have to wait 7 days for to get the results
Mm-hmm.
to get tested, and we were negative.
Mm-hmm.
So that was more or less in June, I think.
Mm-hmm.
June. So my life has been affected emotionally, psychologically, and economically,
Mm-hmm.
even though that I don't have direct families that have died for the virus. I have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of friends because I'm a Fulbrighter. I have friends in different countries of the planet, and I have seen them struggling with the same things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's more severe for Latin people.
Yeah.
My friend in Peru, my friends in Peru are suffering a lot. The people in Argentina is not only the virus, it's the economic and political crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my friends in Ecuador, because Ecuador has passed, if you remember in 2019, there were a severe movements of riots in South America
Mm-hmm.
against of the structural measures of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund and abuse of the states in human rights. And those riots were in Chile, in Ecuador, in Peru, in Argentina, but especially in Chile, Ecuador, Peru, and Venezuela and Colombia were really strong. Then the pandemic came, and during the pandemic, people were not able to go out. Everyone was closed in their houses, but then abuse of police happened again. So people is again in the street.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I have been in contact with people from friends from Ecuador, friends from Peru, friends from Argentina and Colombia. And it's a summatory of bad leadership, the effect of the pandemic, and on top of that, the economical crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to expand a little on when your friend got sick and you and your partner had to get tested. Can you tell me like what kind of symptoms your friend had and how did you guys realize that like oh he they had COVID?
My friend, her name is Farsana. She's from Bangladesh. She's an
Okay.
international student.
Mm-hmm.
She had all the symptoms like sickness, um, like problems in their stomach. She couldn't breathe. She was like having a severe cough, and we were together that one weekend, and she started to feel bad after that. So we thought, like, my immediate reaction, I was crying, and I was like, it was my fault. It was my fault because the truth is, we got the invitation to go to Wisconsin to a cabin with a friend, and the idea was to just be 5 people of us. And she was locked in her room for 1 month without seeing anyone,
Mm-hmm.
and she has depression.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked with my friends and I said, like, can I invite her because she's really alone and she has depression, and maybe going to the forest will help her.
Mm-hmm.
So we went with her and we come back. And when we come back, like on Sunday, Tuesday, she was sick.
Mm-hmm.
So when I knew and she called me, we talked. And one friend called me and she said, "Did you saw Farsana has COVID?" The other friend that I was with, and I say, "I'm talking to her. Like, just give me one moment. I call you back." And she called me and she said, "I have COVID." No, I started to cry,
Mm-hmm.
and I said to her, like, "I'm sorry, it was my fault. I take you there. I don't know if we are asymptomatic. We are going to go and get tested, and we
Mm-hmm.
tell you." And they make all the doctors and her were really trying to figure out who infected her.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not anyone that was with her that weekend. It turns that when she came to the DeKalb, between her going to grocery shopping in the
Mm-hmm.
bus or in her place where she lives, because it's this kind of residences for students that are several apartments, you know how is that?
Mm-hmm.
She could get infected there.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the symptoms, and that was the entire situation. So that week we get tested and we turn negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you guys got tested, how was the testing process? Did you guys have troubles getting getting tested? Because I know in some states you either have to have like a doctor order, and some states it's not free.
Yeah, at the beginning they didn't want to let us to get tested because there were not enough tests available for people.
Mm-hmm.
But it was me calling. I call and I use service. I call his working hospital and I say, hey, this is serious. I mean, we were 3 days with a person that it turns positive. We really need to get tested because we were in contact with a person with the virus. So they say, okay, go to this place. They give us some numbers, and we ended going to a place that is near to Hy-Vee in the Lincoln Highway. I still don't remember. I think it's physician something.
Mm-hmm.
What, mi amor? Immediate care. Um, so we went there early in the morning because they didn't have enough tests. So they told you if you want to get tested, have to get really early and to see if you can reach some of the tests of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So we went there, and the test that we had was the one that they put like a tiny cotton behind your throat. It was horrible, but we get tested, and then we have to wait almost 7 days to get the results.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that sounds very nerve-wracking. Um, so you started talking about your family, like your mom and your father in Colombia, and how they were lost employment. But can you tell me any other ways your family was impacted in Colombia?
Yeah, um, the political situation is getting more problematic in terms that people is really despair because they don't have jobs, that they need to go out to work. So there are people just going out to the streets to sell whatever, like to
Mm-hmm.
sell food or to make the masks and sell it. And so that increased the level of cases. There were a point between August, I think it was August, the highest point of the August, September. The first wave really reached the highest point in Colombia, and it started to decrease. So politically, there has been a lot of problems between the parties and between the government and the opposition.
Mm-hmm.
Economically, people really is struggling to survive. Um, and the time when it was like July, I think, I do some painting. I like art.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of paintings here, and my boyfriend told me like, you have too many paintings. We need to do something with that. And I promised him that when I reach the number 50, I will do something. And I was already in the number 100.
Mm-hmm.
Too much painting. So I said, okay, I'm going to sell it. So I did a campaign uh, for collecting money, and I did it with my mom. So the idea was, and my dad. So the idea was selling the paintings. Well, the money that I get, I will sell it to Colombia, and they will give food to single moms that lose their job.
Mm-hmm.
So we reached like 20 families. We also helped some cousins of mine that they were really without money and without food.
Mm-hmm.
And you think like $500 here, that is not much. In Colombia, it multiplies by three. So it really helps because
Mm-hmm.
of the change in terms of the currency.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get involved because of the Fulbright network. There is an Afro organization of women, and they were trying to reach um, people that only has really poor hospitals in their areas.
Mm-hmm.
So the medical workers didn't have masks or glasses or
Mm-hmm.
gloves, just the basic things. So another part of that money, we sent it to three hospitals in three cities in the Pacific area, which
Mm-hmm.
is an area where it's mostly populated by the Afro-Colombians,
Mm-hmm.
and is really abandoned by the state.
Mm-hmm.
So we help with getting some masks and glasses and gloves for the medical workers. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really nice. It
Yeah.
was really nice to see that you can share, you can try to help with things that you can. I only was able to do it once because normally you reach the friends and people that know you, and then they are tired of buying you more stuff. so, so that was like one time, but it was good. Try to do
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like an amazing effort. So when you started like fundraising and selling your paintings, how did you go about that? You just put on social media like, "Hey, I'm selling my paintings," or did you start like a fundraising
Yeah,
campaign?
I sent you the posters that I did.
Mm-hmm.
My boyfriend helped me teach me how to use PS PSP. What is the name of that program, mi amor? I saw Photoshop.
Oh, Photoshop. Mm-hmm.
And so I did some of there. I was trying. One of the things that I tried to do for myself in the pandemic was to try to learn something else beyond the PhD or do something else beyond the
Mm-hmm.
PhD. So I was painting a lot. Alex was teaching me to use this program. So with that, I did like two or three posters, and
Mm-hmm.
then I create an account in Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I was really reticent to do that, but finally I decided, so I did. And there you start to have followers, and then in Facebook, and then the groups and the friends of the friends.
Mm-hmm.
I also reached the professors on NIU and staff on NIU, and a lot of people here in Tikal was really marvelous. Like at least 20 people helped, and then when I collected the money, I sent it to Colombia. We reached these families, and per family were taking a photo so people could see that we actually really give the food, that we actually really give the money. And I also talked with a lawyer at NIU,
Mm-hmm.
because I was scared to do something that could be illegal or cause me trouble here with the authorities because of the visa and I'm an international student and so on. So he
Mm-hmm.
said that because it's a fundraising and it was free, his advice was like, I am not getting profit of that, that I could do it and it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that was all the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And can you just tell me a little bit about how the families responded in Colombia?
Yeah, that was really moving. Like a lot of people cry and they were telling my mom, thank you. And they sent me messages and most of the people that we reached were women that
Mm-hmm.
normally they were working like as a waitress or they were working selling stuff. There is a lot of informal commerce in Latin America, no?
Mm-hmm.
Or people that were working in services, in restaurants or cleaning stuff because it's the area where my parents live is like that middle class, poor class area.
Mm-hmm.
And these are women that they don't have partners or they get divorced or they were victims of domestic violence. And we are in contact with them because in the same street that my parents live, the the government has a program of helping moms. It's like
Mm-hmm.
kind of a communitarian restaurant or a garden. So there is one woman there that is a friend of my mom that she was taking care of 25 kids in her home
Mm-hmm.
while the moms can go to work, and she gives them food and she plays with them, and she's like a trained professor for babies, for tiny kids.
Mm-hmm.
So she knew these families around the neighborhood. She knew these women that needed help, and there is other people in the same neighborhood, other families that they just uh, have disabilities and they cannot be using the normal systems for them, like to use the public transportation system in Bogota also includes people with disabilities, so they can
Mm-hmm.
mobilize themselves with that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, the entire transportation system shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that doesn't have cars, the people that cannot walk, really have problems if that transportation system is not open.
Mm-hmm.
So of course they were out of work. Um, so that was another family that we helped. People reacted pretty positive. People reacted
Mm-hmm.
happily with sadness. Is
Mm-hmm.
is really moving.
Yeah, that is really moving. That's amazing. Um, so moving forward a little bit, um, I guess you've answered questions of like how it's impacted you and your partner and your family. Can you tell me how it was going out into the world um before COVID and how it was different after COVID?
Yeah, well, before COVID, I was dancing. I was teaching salsa classes here at NIU with Salsa del Norte. I was going to my office and going to classes and going to the library and being more independent.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, During COVID, I think it's hard to be all the time in the house
Mm-hmm.
or most of the time. Um, my boyfriend and I, we practice a lot of biking.
Mm-hmm.
He's more professional than me, so
Mm-hmm.
he bikes farther and faster. So the one activity that we can do here in Vital is that you can go 6 blocks farther and then it's just a country road
Mm-hmm.
and there is no one there. And people really doesn't practice massively biking. We sometimes see people, but it's really not too much. So that's something that we were doing during the summer, like to clean our heads.
Mm-hmm.
What is hard is that now winter is coming and you cannot go out. So
Mm-hmm.
it was hard for me because I have a lot of expectations of the summer to make some trips, to go out, to be outside, because I know winter for me is harder. Is to be all the time inside, but this time was like all the time inside and just going out a few times to bike.
Mm-hmm.
I really decreased the social contact, even though I managed to see some people like in the lagoon or open places, and
Mm-hmm.
like once per month I see people.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not good, but
Mm-hmm.
I cannot avoid it. Like I am more social than my boyfriend. I really miss. I am an extroverted person, so I really miss to talk with people and to
Mm-hmm.
see people. And um, I am Latina and I'm Colombian. I miss party. I miss dancing.
Mm-hmm.
I miss cooking with people, and so the social interaction for me has been hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think in the PhD life, there is not much difference in terms of work. Like in the
Mm-hmm.
PhD life, you are alone after a certain point,
Mm-hmm.
and and I just have to work harder for to pass this exam. So I think the after the pandemic, I get fat. I didn't do much exercise. I should be doing more. um, I started to see more television um, and do more paintings. Like I think that's how my life had changed, you know. And
Yeah.
then I do feel that I have been more stressed, more irritable. Like tiny things that shouldn't be a big mess are more
Mm-hmm.
complicated now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you mentioned that you like to be social, right? And that's very common in Latino culture. But how do you decide like who you interact with? And like, yeah, how do you decide like who you can see?
Like honestly, I
Mm-hmm.
just see the Latin people.
Mm-hmm.
Like honestly,
Mm-hmm.
like I miss to talk in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So there are like 3 Colombians here, and I go to see them,
Mm-hmm.
and they get tested, and I know they are negative because and I use making this random sampling. So that's why I said like I go to see them.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't seen all my friends from Cambodia or from Asia. I haven't seen a lot of people from groups that I was interacting. And also, what happened with that college town is that when semester change, like the people goes,
Mm-hmm.
and all the people that we knew because we arrived here in 2017, most of them have gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to interact with people that I know that is more or less healthy,
Mm-hmm.
and because I see them most of the time outside.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but nevertheless it's risky and you get paranoid after
Yeah.
that, or I get paranoid after that. So
Mhm.
after that I am all the time thinking, oh my god, we take too much
Mhm.
risk, but I cannot avoid it. Like,
Mhm.
what can I do? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So earlier in the pandemic, I just want to touch on this a little bit. There was like people were like really focusing on like Zoom interactions instead of in-person interactions. Did you like meet with your friends like virtually, or did you prefer only in person?
No, I do a lot of things virtually, a lot since that
Mm-hmm.
moment now. Like with the friends of Colombia,
Mm-hmm.
we talk a little bit more. With the friends from here, US, I also did a couple of phone calls and Zoom meetings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Here in the Calf, because it was summer and we used to have like good weather until this week. If I wanted to see someone, we see us in the lagoon and we keep distance, but you are in an open space. So it was more easy to handle.
Mm-hmm.
There were like 2 or 3 times that we were inside of a place, but we tried to keep the door open, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's, if you consider like a normal life, my life would be every weekend going out,
Mm-hmm.
and in from March to October, just have 3 or 2 meetings is like really a few for me. I know
Mm-hmm.
the American culture, like they have friends and they say they're friends, but they just see each other like once in a month. Like
Mm-hmm.
I am not like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Eh,
Same.
so
Being Latina, I talk to my friends every day. I see them very
yeah,
often. Yeah, same thing
exactly.
though. Yeah. Okay. So we're getting close to the 1 hour mark. Do you still have time for a couple more questions?
I have a call from Colombia at 11. So
Okay.
yeah, we can talk like for 10 more minutes, and then I have to let you go.
Okay. Yeah, that's no problem. I guess before I let you go, can you talk to me a little bit about the ways COVID has impacted your education?
When you are a PhD student, more or less you are alone and you are by yourself, and you already reach a point where you have certain understanding and you have read and discussed a lot with your professors. And and I am already 36 years old. I already have experience writing and being a lawyer, so I can put myself, despite of the problems and all the things that I have in my head, I can
Mm-hmm.
force me to work
Mm-hmm.
because I have to.
Yeah.
And that's a way that I grew up. I think it's because of the Catholicism. Every time that I think about that,
Mm-hmm.
that you can really force yourself to do things that you don't want,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm disciplined. But I can understand, and especially we have seen that with my boyfriend because he is teaching classes. And for undergrads, it's different. For undergrads, they are learning how to learn. They are
Mm-hmm.
learning how to read and how to write. So it's really hard to see them being less engaged, being depressed, um, being like so frustrated with the learning process, because the virtual environment can give you some insights and you can try to make a video and try to make things more fun to learn, but it is not going to replace the interaction of being in a classroom and trying to be focused in one subject and trying to be engaged in a discussion. It's really hard for the learning process.
Mm-hmm.
In my learning process, the only thing that I saw that it was more hard or more extreme is that when I was presenting the exam, we already have this scheme of taking home the exam and you spend 32 hours answering 3 questions, don't sleep for 2 days, and just
Mm-hmm.
get it done, and then you have the oral exam. If I didn't was in the pandemic scenario, I will be in a classroom with my professors talking, and that
Mm-hmm.
could be more intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
I was here in this office, but I was the same scared. I couldn't sleep well during the previous days and after
Mm-hmm.
neither, because that exam is really important for a PhD student. Like you really reach the point where you can go to do your project, your dissertation proposal.
Mm-hmm.
You don't pass those exams in my program for 2 times, you are out of the program. Like you
Mm-hmm.
lose 3 years of working.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a scholarship. I need to pass those exams. So it was really a stressful time on top of the pandemic, on top of
Mm-hmm.
everything. And I sent a letter to political science department and I said like, this is not fair. It's
Mm-hmm.
not fair because the people that has been presenting this exam before the pandemic, they didn't have to deal with a political problem, economical problem, with the
Mm-hmm.
mental problems that I have to deal. And you are telling me that I have to do this in the same conditions, and you are telling me that I just have 2 opportunities. So I complain.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't give us anything. They don't
Mm-hmm.
increase the time, they don't change the
Oh,
rules.
wow.
They only give us a third opportunity for the people that was presenting the exam during the pandemic. And that was good because
Mm-hmm.
my friend that she gets sick with the COVID, she was
Mm-hmm.
presenting one of these exams and it's more likely that she's going to fail because she
Mm-hmm.
couldn't study.
Mm-hmm.
So that affected me, like to put myself in the mindset of go and read 700 pages and make the
Mm-hmm.
summary and then write, and it's hard. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to tell you it was easy. It is
Yeah.
not every day. It's still hard.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is that when you are in the PhD level, you more or less know that the learning process is an individual process, and that if I want to learn something, I have to do it by myself. The professor is not going to come with PowerPoint and telling me you need to learn this. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I was discussing with the Colombians the other day because it was
Mm-hmm.
a Colombian soccer match, and I
Mm-hmm.
went to see with them, with just 2 of them, and they were like, no, the professor didn't put the PowerPoint presentation. I was like, what the heck? I mean, I don't have that.
Yeah.
And my boyfriend told them, like, you know what happened with us? We need
Mm-hmm.
to make the syllabus. I need to read the syllabus and I need to figure out by myself. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have anyone guiding me, taking me by the hand. That's
Mm-hmm.
the difference when you are in a PhD level. In the
Mm-hmm.
PhD level, you need to deal with yourself
Mm-hmm.
and with your problem of learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's hard. It has been more demanding and more stressful, but we are there. We are giving the fight every day. Every day
Mm-hmm.
we wake up and we try to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds, yep, I can relate. Okay, so we're getting close to the 11 a.m. mark, but I would like to ask before I let you go, if you would have time for a follow-up interview, because I still have more questions I'd like to ask you.
How many questions do you have there?
Well, we have an interview guide, so we've touched briefly on the education and daily impacts, but if you would like if you don't, I know you're busy, if to make time for that.
No, we can talk about the next week. Is okay?
Yeah, next week is
Because
fine.
this week and today and tomorrow and this Saturday, I have to talk with a lot of people from Colombia that they only have time Saturday, and I
Yeah.
need to be focusing in the information that they can get me for my project.
Okay.
But the next week, yeah, next week we can try.
Okay, that should be no problem. I'll send you a follow-up email. But before I let you go, do you have any like last comments you want to say?
No, I think this project is really interesting. I think it's important. Uh, there are some communities of people here in DeKalb, some Latinians that they are not part of NIU.
Mm-hmm.
But the Colombian friends that I have, they know them, and I think it would be interesting to talk with that people.
Yeah,
Because
I would love to connect with them if you could connect me with them.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because it's people that is working here illegally, and they
Mm-hmm.
have another experience, and
Mm-hmm.
it's people that is surviving here in the middle of the pandemic, taking the risk of being outside and having works outside,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's interesting to talk with that people so to
Yeah.
know what is their experience.
Mm-hmm.
I will try to see if they can get involved in that. I will try to make the connection to you. I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would
beautiful.
appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you so much for the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was great to hear from you, and I will take care.
Okay.
Okay, we will follow up.
Thank you, beautiful. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
yes, we talk the next week. Bye
All
bye.
right.
Have a
Cuídate.
nice day.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
También, chao, chao, chao.
Bye.